In today's video, I wanted to discuss my favorite quest of all time featured in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. If you put any thought into the thumbnail, you likely already know what the quest is. It might be confusing though as to why it's this one. Oblivion has no shortage of amazing and thought-provoking quests. A Shadow over Hackdirt, Through a Nightmare Darkly, The Forlorn Watchman, Where Spirits Have Lease, etc. are just a few examples of quests that are arguably better and more fun than the one I'm going to talk about today. Of course, everything is subjective in the game, and the reason this specific quest is my favorite isn't necessarily because of a riveting story, crazy fight, or valuable loot, even though in a way it has a minor combination of all of these, and better yet, can be done at any level. Before I get ahead of myself, the quest in question for today is that of unfriendly competition. I'll tell you the story of Jensine, Thorinir, and Agramir first, then explain why this is my favorite task to do in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. As per usual, the facts and information provided are brought to you by the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. Unfriendly competition begins in the Imperial City Market District, and, as mentioned before, can be started at any level. By visiting the shops of select merchants within the area, they'll greet you with an opening line, detailing their latest woes.
Finally, a new customer. Please, look around. Just promise me you won't buy from that fetcher, Thorinir. I cringe whenever that name is mentioned. His inventory has to be stolen or something because his prices are so low. They're below my cost. At this rate, I don't know if I can keep my doors open. All the people are spending their money there. Bah! If you want to help out some poor merchants, head on over to Jensine's Good as New merchandise. She'll fill you in with the details. Jensine is running the show. She will get in but good.
This fellow merchant, Thorinir, is certainly the talk of the town amongst most of the merchants. Visiting Claudette Perrick of the Gilded Carafe or Tertullian Varus of the Three Brothers Trade Goods, they share similar responses to Ogier in regards to Thorinir.
I have everything for the budding alchemist under one roof. Far more than Thorinir would ever have, despite his horrid business ethics.
Say, you look like someone that could help us out. Having a bit of trouble with another merchant in town who goes by the name of Thorinir.
Regardless of who you talk to, they all say the same thing, that this Thorinir isn't abiding by the Union's rules, and that they all think there's something suspicious going on with his inventory. They then direct you over to Jensine at Jensine's Good as New merchandise.
Feel free to browse, friend. It's nice to see a new shopper. I was afraid I lost any hope of new business ever since Thorinir opened up. So, Ogier sent you, Well then, he usually sizes up people well, so you may be just what we're looking for. I'm the chairperson for the Society of Concerned Merchants. We formed this group a while back to keep a nice, fair economic balance in town. Not every store is a member, but we're slowly trying to convince them to join. Everything was fine until Thorinir opened his shop nearby. Selling all sorts of merchandise, he undercuts prices like you wouldn't believe. He doesn't always sell what we sell, but it is still a problem. People who buy tend to want to spend their money there. That leaves none for us. It's getting so bad a few of us may have to close up shop. He outright refuses to join the society or even discuss the matter. We are convinced he's up to no good. What we need is for you to case his establishment and figure out where he gets his inventory. Find some proof of his wrongdoing and let us know. We cannot do it ourselves, as he recognizes all of us. The job pays a fair bounty in gold when he is brought to justice. I hope you're more successful uncovering his scheme than we've been. His inventory must be stolen. It has to be. He prices less than it costs to make some of those things. Go see for yourself.
With the full story explained, the player is then directed over to the copious coin purse within the district. Before doing so, I decided to look at Jensen's prices in order to see how much of a price difference there actually was between the two of their stores. It's never really been a detail that I've tried to look into before, and this time around was the first time it's ever really popped into my mind. I've always been somewhat interested in this so-called society of merchants that exists within the market district. I know that it's likely just a union of sorts, but it doesn't seem like all of the merchants are a part of it, only really the ones who are concerned about Thorinir's prices. Maybe the others are a part of it and just aren't bothered by his prices and wares, who knows. Heading over to Thorinir's, you can see that he certainly has a lot of inventory. The wood elf appears to be in good spirits and well-mannered towards his customers.
What kind of deal can I make for you today? Let's do business.
Honestly, looking at his inventory, he doesn't have all the same items as Jensen, and even if there is overlap, they're pretty much being sold for the exact same price. I didn't look at the other vendors' wares, but I'd assume that even if there's a 1 or 2 gold piece difference, that makes a world of difference for the NPCs who are buying. But maybe not for the player. Reverting back to the quest at hand, the player can now question Thorinir about his inventory.
What about my inventory? Well, that would be a trade secret. I can't divulge how I pass the great savings on to you now, can I? Just like a baker not revealing his best recipes, I must keep my sources anonymous, or every merchant in town would use them. Suffice to say, they are quite reliable and low cost. That way, you walk out with a full coin purse. I have the best prices in town. Why? I'm smart, and you're smart. We know the right people. We get the best deals. Goodbye. Hope to see you again very soon.
Reasonably, he doesn't budge or give up any details on his supplier. If you were in his position, why would you if you were way more successful and had way better margins than your competitors? I've always wondered what shop was there prior to the coin purse. Everyone says Thorinir just opened up his shop, so what could have been there beforehand and what were they selling? Maybe another general store of sorts, or something more on the lines of a service provider. I don't know, it's just somewhere that my mind went. Anyways, the player can now return back to Jensen in order to deliver the bad news.
Any news about that certain task we discussed? I told you he wouldn't cooperate. Your best bet is to shadow him and see where he goes.
Like most shops in Cyrodiil, the copious coin purse closes up at 8 PM, and Thorinir then leaves for his nightly adventure. The first bit of his routine involves him joining the other merchants in the district for some food and drinks at the Merchant's Inn. He stays there until around midnight, and then gets up and continues to walk around the district. Telling him, he soon stops in one of the back gardens and meets up with a shady character.
That you, Agamir?
Shh, not so loud. How many times have I told you that?
Sorry, I am not used to this kind of meeting. It always makes me nervous.
Well, just shut up and listen to me. The next shipment will be sooner than I expected. Just have the money ready.
Same assortment of things? I mean, I have enough clothing for now.
You take what I get. I get notice at the last second, and I have to jump on it. No time to be picky about it.
Well, that society is putting more pressure on me, so maybe we better cut back for a while.
You cut back now, and I'm going to take my business elsewhere. Or maybe pay a visit to that Jensen and tell her about your little scheme.
Fine. You made your point. Contact me when you have the items, and we'll meet again.
Don't worry. It'll be very soon. Now get out of here.
Choosing to speak with Thorinir at this current moment sounds like this.
Why are you following me? Please, go away. I'm quite busy.
And choosing to speak with Agamir at this current moment sounds like this.
Yeah. Don't know anyone by that name. Now go away. Inventory? I am a simple trapper. My inventory just consists of pelts and skins. I would hardly call that inventory. Now get out of my way.
Certainly a fairly sketchy meetup for something as innocent as meeting with your supplier. Usually at around this point, the player can tell there's something fishy going on here. The secret midnight meeting, Thorinir's nerves, Agrimir's evasiveness, it all builds the tension that there's more at play. For most of my life, I assumed that if the two of them noticed you eavesdropping on their conversation or caught you following them, the quest would either fail or you would need to restart the tailing process. I know for a fact that I was never that careful whilst following either of the suspects, so I have no clue why I thought that. The game then directs the player to tail Agrimir in order to see where he ends up. He walks through the rest of the market district, into the Green Emperor Way, and then into the Talos Plaza district. From there, Agrimir meanders his way through the streets and enters inside of a house on the outskirts. The player is then directed to break into the home when he's not there and see what can be found inside. I always found the timing for this part tricky, as Agrimir leaves his home at different hours of the day depending on the day of the week. If he's in his house, you'll receive a message saying it appears that Agrimir is home and the door is barred from the inside. The sweet spot though, no matter which day, is from 5 to 7 PM. Entering inside of his home and having a look around the upstairs and main floor section, it appears as though he lives a fairly normal life. Where the story continues to unfold, however, is when the player enters inside of his basement. Descending down the levels, you'll come across a room that has some disturbing contents within it. As pointed out by the journal, there's mud everywhere, bones, bone meal, a dirty shovel and boots, etc. Agrimir is seemingly receiving, or rather stealing, his stock from the deceased. One small detail about this room that always confused me a bit was why there was a pool of blood on the floor underneath one of the chests. I guess it's to insinuate that the grave robberies are being done to the very recently deceased, so recent that their blood is still fresh, but it's a very particular detail. It almost makes me wonder if they're killing and robbing a select few of their victims, but it's probably not much of an idea to put more thought into. On a table in the back, surrounded by candles, is a book called the Macabre Manifest. Looking at it, it contains the names, locations, and items of those whom Agrimir has recently stolen from. Of course, this is the book that holds one of many Lord of the Rings Easter eggs, as Oford Gabbings is actually an anagram for Frodo Baggins. All of his belongings are references to various items that Frodo has had on him within the trilogy. Taking the manifest, the player is then directed back to Thorinir in order to confront him with the evidence. Interestingly, I didn't test to confirm, but I do recall that if you time it correctly, Agrimir can come home while you're inside of his house. It's treated the same way any other NPC treats you trespassing, but still, I find it interesting, especially since he bars the door from being opened when he's inside. Before returning back to Thorinir, if you head back to Jensine, she expresses a rather disgusted reaction.
Any news about that certain task we discussed? By the divines, I can't believe this. They would dare defile the dead to make a profit? The City Watch will hear of this. You should take this book to Thorinir. Confronted with this, he may just see things differently. Thorinir better pray he had no knowledge of Agrimir's grave robbing, or the Watch will have his head.
With that out of the way, it's now time to go to the copious coin purse and show the book to Thorinir.
Welcome back. I can't believe what I'm seeing in this book. I'm mortified to think these things here were once on the bodies of the recently deceased. It's just too horrible to comprehend. I don't even know what to say. I guess an apology is not enough. What can I do? Yes. That's the least I can do. First and foremost, I will never meet with him again. I can promise you that. Secondly, I remember him mentioning a place he had to be this very day. Yes, that's right. He said that he wouldn't be able to do anything else, as he had something important to do. You don't think he would dig up another... Oh, no, he wouldn't. But I guess he has been. Oh, my. What have I done? Yes, you do that. And in the meantime, I'll decide what to do with all these ill-gotten things. I'm so sorry. I don't even want to look at it for another moment. I hope everyone can forgive me for not doing a better job checking up on my sources. I hope you can forgive me. I had no idea.
In my original video on this channel regarding this quest, I made an argument that Thorinir was either in on the grave robberies or, at the very least, was turning a blind eye to shady business practices. I no longer hold the belief that he was completely in on it, but honestly, the more I play through this quest, the more I see that he demonstrates ignorance and willful negligence. I won't get too much into it, but to me, there's no way he didn't have at least a suspicion that his inventory was comprised of stolen goods. He must have had some thoughts and opinions on his stock, but simply turned a blind eye to it. I personally don't count him as completely innocent. Perhaps the way he wraps up this quest exonerates him from any consequences, but I don't buy it that he's Mr. Krabs reincarnate and only thinks about how much money he's going to make, and genuinely nothing else. Back to the quest, following the marker, it leads you to the Green Emperor Way, and ultimately over to the Trentius family mausoleum. You'll discover that the tomb has been unsealed and suspect it to be Agramir's doing. Entering inside of the crypt, you'll spot Agramir and another Nord clad in leveled armor. Getting in closer, Agramir approaches.
I had a feeling you'd catch on sooner or later. That's why I had this trap prepared for you. If you'll notice, the grave is already dug. This time it wasn't to take something away from the graveyard. It was to add something. I'm afraid all I can offer you is an unmarked grave.
The two men arm themselves and begin to attack you. Agramir uses the legendary Debaser, which has decent enchantments and can certainly deal a number on the player. Rolgarel, as mentioned before, uses leveled equipment and will always wield the best possible unenchanted longsword. Trying to escape the crypt, you'll be met with a message that the doors have been sealed shut, so the only way out is to fight. Funnily enough, I always wanted to learn a little more about Rolgarel. It really wouldn't add much more to the story, and I feel like I know all that I need to about him, but my mind goes off and wonders the little things. Like, what's his relationship to Agramir? Where does he stay in the city? Was he secretly a guest at Agramir's house? Etc. Once both Nords are defeated, the threat has ended and the player can be at ease. Agramir holds the key to the mausoleum, and it needs to be looted in order to leave. Of course, Debaser should be taken, if not to use, at least to sell. Interestingly, Debaser is a reference to Sting from The Lord of the Rings, and is the glowing sword with inscriptions that Agramir found on Oford Gabbings' body. Rolgarel has a good heavy armor set and longsword for the taking, if that's the gear you want to use or sell. And lastly, behind Caliban Trentius' grave, you'll find a decent mace called Caliban's Grim Retort. Before leaving, you'll have to grab Agramir's dirty shovel as the last piece of evidence for his crimes. Something small that I've also wondered too is why not tell the guards what Agramir is up to and to call for backup. I suppose on one hand, it was never stated that he would be at the Trentius crypt, nor did you know that he would lock you in there, but still, I was always surprised that this was never an option, especially considering that this is happening right in front of the Imperial Palace. Exiting the mausoleum, the player is now directed to head straight over to the copious coin purse in order to fill Thorinir in on the recent events.
Were you able to stop Agramir? Then we can at last rest. I feared had he somehow bested you, I'd be next. It is fortunate that your skills exceeded his. I've come to some decisions. I intend to donate all of the money I have made, as well as what is left of these stolen items, to the temple. I also want you to know that I had a long discussion with Jensine, and I have decided to join the society. I realize you risked your life to give me a chance, and Thorinir never forgets things like that. Accept this ring as a humble reward. It's the least I can do to say thank you. Now, don't be a stranger. The copious coin purse is still in business. I have disposed of all my ill-gotten merchandise and replaced it with more expensive but carefully obtained items. You've shown me mercy. I won't forget that. Thank you.
Interestingly, the weatherward circlet that Thorinir gives you is also a reference to the One Ring from The Lord of the Rings. If you were to look closely at it, it has engravings on it in similar fashion to the One Ring and was also taken from Oford Gabbings' dead body. The last place to go for this quest is back to Jensine's.
I have been anxiously awaiting your return. I am pleased that Thorinir has decided to donate his inventory to the temple. At least he is trying to make amends. The very thought of what Agarmir was doing sickens me. I hope those poor souls rest in peace now that this is over. Well done! This shovel will certainly confirm Agarmir's crimes. Along with the manifest, it should prove useful to the City Watch. In your absence, Thorinir visited and we spoke at length about his role in this scheme. I believe him when he says he didn't know Agarmir's sources. He told me of his intentions to donate all of the money and inventory to the local temple. He also agreed to buy and sell merchandise at fair prices. Last but not least, he's officially joined the society. I am taken aback by his honest intentions. In return, the society has decided not to press charges. His name will be absconded from the records of this crime. Now, I'm sure you are waiting to hear about your reward. The society thanks you for everything you have done. Please, take this gold. Many thanks on behalf of all of us. I'm mature enough to admit I was mistaken about Thorinir. He's a welcome member of our group in the Market District. It's been a pleasure doing business with you.
The player is handed a small sum of gold as their final reward, and that concludes the quest, Unfriendly Competition. A small detail I find interesting, as pointed out per the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, is that Thorinir doesn't actually go through with donating any of his inventory to the temple. He still has the same items available for purchase, as well as on display around his shop. So why is this specific quest my favorite? As mentioned before, there are so many other quests in Oblivion that are more memorable and engaging than this one, so to some, it may seem like an odd choice. And over the last year of playing this game thoroughly and experiencing some of these quests for the first time, there are honestly a few contenders that are neck and neck for the #1 spot. But there's something extremely nostalgic and almost cozy about Unfriendly Competition. Obviously, the grave robbing aspect, Mausoleum, and Agramir's house are unnerving and far from a relaxing time. But I think it's the fact that this entire quest takes place solely in the Imperial City that makes it feel that way. Knowing that you're surrounded by thick stone walls, friendly faces at every turn, guards to help you out in times of need, etc. help make this quest feel not as lonely. I've always felt that even though the Elder Scrolls games are filled with interactive NPCs, it's often a lonely universe. A lot of the time, you're sent off to these faraway, obscure caves, forts, or ruins on your own. They run deep into the ground, are dark and secluded, and the only beings nearby are often dangerous and threatening. Even though Unfriendly Competition certainly has its horrific moments, it's nice to know that you're at least surrounded by those who would help you out in a flash, and that the surrounding area is secure and friendly. As for the nostalgic side, I'm sure that some of you have caught on that even though I grew up playing this game and have played it for so many years, I have a very strange playstyle. I would often cycle through a warrior, mage, or archer class, not really learning about their specialties and ignoring all of the other classes and skill groups in order to just play through the same quests. I would often just rotate my character in exchange for a slightly different experience with the same storylines. I have no idea why. I think it's because this game frightened me when I was younger, and in some ways may have left some sort of psychological scar when it came to venturing out of my comfort zone within the game. It also could have been due to fear of the unknown whilst playing. I was always so worried that something external was going to affect my character, like vampirism, getting trapped in one spot, or an infinite death loop via enemy or terrain. Playing on console had a lot more restrictions, and especially back then when information was a lot more limited. Regardless, guess which quest I would always do first when starting a brand new playthrough. It was this one, and not to mention, it's super easy and accessible for lower level players. There's a reason this quest was the second lore/theory related video ever put out on this channel, as I knew it had to be one of the first ones I covered and gave appreciation to. Playing it now, it reminds me of starting a brand new adventure in one of my favorite games, while showing me that exploring, continuing with a playthrough, and having new experiences is what this game is also all about. So that's why Unfriendly Competition is my favorite quest in the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Although, I will say, some other quests are slowly beginning to creep in for the title, which I find to be very fitting. I'd love to hear which quest is your favorite and why, and until next time, keep on adventuring.